Meteorologist Greg D with a special update on Hurricane Matthew. Many of you may have interest down in the Florida area, so let's break this down for you. This really stands out. This is the eye of Hurricane Matthew. It sideswiped the large island in the Bahamas where Nassau is located, and now it's emerging back up over open water. A couple things to note for you. Right here is the Gulf Stream. This is the warmest water in the Atlantic Ocean. It shoots out of the Gulf of Mexico and hits up the east coast of Florida. This is where the hurricane is headed, so we do not expect it to weaken. In fact, as of the last update, this is now a Category 4 storm. That is actually important. It's been 4,000 days since parts of Florida got hit by a major hurricane, Category 3 or greater. And if this thing makes landfall north of Jupiter, this will be the strongest hurricane to make landfall this late into the season, this far north. So this could be a historic storm. Outer rain bands already coming into Miami and then up to the north towards Daytona Beach, though the core of the storm is still down to the south. A couple more areas to note. All the hurricane force winds, this is a tiny storm, are located within 35 miles of the eye. It's just this inner ring. Tropical storm force winds are in this outer ring of heavier convection on the west and northern side of the storm. If you've got friends and family down in South Florida, this is actually good news for them. Now, if they are from, let's say, Fort Lauderdale south into Miami, this part of the coast moves a little bit west. It's going to be farther away from the storm. The part of Florida that will be most affected by this is going to be from Jupiter north toward actually Titusville, Daytona Beach. So that's the Space Coast and then the First Coast. These are parts of Florida, especially once you get up towards Jacksonville, that have not seen a direct strike from a hurricane in decades. This is a big deal. Many folks here do not really know what a Category 4 hurricane can do. So let's get right to the information here. Hurricane warnings now extend from just north of Miami through the entire Space and First Coast of Florida, that's up 95. They include all of the Sea Isles there in Georgia, and now the coast of South Carolina as far as Beaufort, just south of Charleston. This is where we expect hurricane force winds within 24 hours. Latest info on the storm, moving northwest at 14. It's picking up speed. The tropical storm force winds will get to Florida later on tonight. Movement, 14 miles an hour, wind speed 140 miles an hour. That is a Category 4 hurricane. 5 is the strongest you can get. This is an extreme storm, very important. Also to note and something to consider, there is a second tropical storm, almost a hurricane, Nicole, out in the middle of the ocean, east of Matthew. Nicole is not a concern to us directly, but sometimes when you get two hurricanes this close together, two tropical systems, they start to rotate around each other. This is known as the Fujiwara effect, and we may see that in Matthew's track. We may actually see a loop here because of the interaction with Nicole. Check this out. These are the computer models, and look what they show. The tracks line up perfectly for the first 24 to 48 hours. So it is now almost certain that this thing is just going to sideswipe the Florida coast. That's important. It may not actually make landfall. It may just follow the coast just offshore, exposing a huge length of the Florida coast to hurricane force winds. It is not like the storm is just hitting Florida and moving on by. It is going to remain near the coast for a very long time and then could continue to follow the coast, whether it's farther or closer, we are not sure yet, all the way up into South Carolina. Savannah has not been hit by a hurricane since the late 1800s, a direct hit. And some of these places in South Carolina, 50, 60 years. 1988 is the last time we had one hit near Charleston. That was Hugo. That was almost a Cat 5 storm as well. Notice how Miami down here, if you've got friends toward Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, they're a little farther away from the track. So they may get some gusts to hurricane force. I think a lot of this is going to be tropical storm force winds. The biggest concern for them is going to be storm surge. Most of the effects from this storm are going to be north of West Palm up to Jacksonville, this long east coast of Florida, and the effects could be serious with this system. Here's what the National Hurricane Center is thinking. This thing is going to This is incredible. It's actually going to parallel the coast as a Category 4 all the way from Cape Canaveral, Titusville, Fort Pierce, back up to Jacksonville. Then turn, follow the coast, maybe weaken through a Category 3 or 2, still a 2 off the coast of Beaufort, South Carolina. This would be coming up into Friday and Saturday. Then make that loop, never get to North Carolina, and could turn back into Florida as a tropical storm next week. So we could see 2 landfalls from the same system. We'll have to watch how much of this holds together. Often when they do this loop, by the time it comes back at Florida, it's just a weak tropical storm or a remnant low. The other big impact here is storm surge. This is a storm surge model from the National Weather Service, where you're seeing these oranges and reds. That is storm surge of 6 feet or more. The ocean, it's not a wave, it's not a tsunami, will actually rise 6 feet. For every foot that the ocean rises, the water goes forward about 400. So you're talking about, in some cases, the water inundating a big part of the beach. And what's worst here is in this north part of Florida, there are inlets. The St. Johns River runs through Jacksonville out into the Atlantic Ocean. Jacksonville is actually mostly on the river. It's not on the beach. Jack's beaches are a little farther east of downtown. These areas are wetlands and river inlets, and this flooding could really be pushed inland. Savannah could see 4 to 8 feet of storm surge in a place that really hasn't seen it in the modern era. These levees, flood control systems, if there are any along the Georgia and Florida coast, will really be tested with this hurricane. Notice the storm surge high, that's Hilton Head Island, that's Beaufort right there, goes into the low country of South Carolina. That's going to be the biggest concern, not as much the wind, but the flooding along the coast and inland along any river inlets. The second problem, the wind. This is a power outage index for the storm. Where you're seeing total red, that's basically everyone without power. Where you start seeing the yellows and the oranges, that's majority to maybe more of folks without power. Here's the problem. North of Orlando, south of Orlando, mainly palm trees and smaller trees. North of Orlando, especially up here, Jacksonville, Duval County, back into South Georgia and South Carolina, these areas are heavily forested with pine and live oaks. Live oaks are those huge trees that spread out for tens of feet away from the trunk, and they've got that Spanish moss hanging off of them. They are extremely brittle and they will break and crack, causing power outages. And more importantly, there could be some areas near the coast here that are inaccessible because of the amount of trees and tree branches on the roads. This is a more powerful hurricane than we had making the land in the Panhandle about a month ago. That was back in Tallahassee. They had lots of problems there with tree damage. This one, that was a Category 2. This one's a Category 4. This is a whole different scale. So we're going to have to watch this thing very carefully. Betsy's got updates on the forecast tonight at 6, 7, and 11. I'll be tweeting updates as well. You can follow me, @GregDWeather on Instagram and Twitter. There are no effects from this storm here in Northeast Ohio. Take a look at your extended forecast. We do cool down for the weekend, but the storm will not reach us. The next couple of days are looking good. That's the latest here. I've got another update in depth for you. I'll be going into the storm. We'll be tracking it along the Florida coast tomorrow morning on Channel 3 News from 4:30 to 7, and we'll probably do some live updates throughout the morning as well. Take care, everyone.